Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas, on Friday, March the 28th. And tonight we're joined by phone by a good friend, Barry Casselman, the Prairie Editor, one of our favorite people, and somebody we always like to go to for analysis and what is going on politically in the country. So let me say hello to our good friend, Barry. I hope that the weather and everything is going well up in the Twin Cities.
It is. We're very lots of sun, no snow, and warm weather.
All right. Well, as you and I are big baseball fans, so it's the baseball season's here. So as uh, as someone used to say, Happy New Year when the baseball season starts. It's always a good time. Well, I've seen, I guess, quite a few presidencies, new presidencies, I should say. I probably going back to Nixon. That was probably the first one that I really saw from the very beginning. I've never seen anything like this. Not just the things that he's doing, but the activity, the pace that he's on. And so, what is your general reaction to these first 60 days, 65, 70 days of President Trump number two, Barry?
Well, it's clearly historic, and just as his political comeback was extraordinary in history, I think his first 60 days or so are the most extraordinary of a president, certainly in memory, perhaps ever. Of course, the circumstances are unusual. He is the only one other president has come back from losing a presidential election after winning the first term and then having his second term after a lapse of 4 years. The bottom line is, of course, Trump learned a lot in his first term. He had lots of, although he accomplished much from the conservative point of view, he had problems, especially with his people around him, who weren't altogether on the same page as he was, left early, turned on him, and made his life difficult, complicated, of course, by the attacks from the Democrats. And but he learned about all that, and so when he won this time in the interim period between Election Day and Inauguration Day, he very carefully rounded up a cabinet that was both very, very loyal and it turns out pretty smart, although very unorthodox. And he had a plan, and people around him were on board, and he was able to use the device of presidential orders to accomplish a great deal. Some things didn't work out. Some things won't work out until, in fact, the Congress acts. There's a very undefined line historically between what the president can do on his own and what he has to do with the executive, with the legislative branch, and that's the big issue today. The Democrats have been caught off guard. Not only were they surprised by the immensity of his electoral victory, winning, of course, not only the electoral college but the popular vote, increasing his vote, even in states that he didn't win. And then when he started doing his executive orders, unable to, most of the orders were, almost all of them were things that he promised. As I describe it, he acted from pennies to Panama Canal. And he, by that I mean he stopped the minting of the penny, and he took back, in effect, he didn't take over the Panama Canal or take it back as a possession, but he took control of the operation in a way that was much more acceptable to the United States and much less a liability because the Panamanians had turned over the operation of the canal to the Chinese, which of course no longer will be. But there were so many of them, over 100 orders. His impact on the international playing field has been immense. He is basically, he isn't, we still have many who oppose us, but in fact, the U.S. is back in charge of the free world. We've adjusted our relationships with Europe. We've strengthened our ties with our allies in Israel, and we've one of the most important things was we sealed the border. One of his key promises, which had a tremendous amount of support, and he does. The border is essentially now sealed. So it's been a tremendous. It's not without flaws. The so-called birthright citizenship ruling may not be constitutionally valid as an act by the executive, may require action by the Congress as well. But the Democrats are seemingly lost and unable to deal with his actions because most of them are very, very popular.
Mm-hmm.
Democrats do oppose, for example, some of the deportations. They're on the wrong side of popular opinion and making a mess of it. So it's a very, very interesting period. Things are not concluded. We will have to wait, in some cases, weeks, months, maybe a year or more. The economy, of course, remains unformed in the new term. But, of course, at the same time, the attempts to reform government and then get rid of so many unnecessary federal jobs will have tremendous impact, and it won't necessarily be felt for several months.
Right.
It's a very interesting period. It's, of course, as we both agree, unprecedented, not a perfect, it's not a perfect game at this point, but the president seems to be well ahead in the early innings.
Right. No, I think you're right. It's not a perfect game. It would be very, perfect games are rare, but I think you're right. I think he's ahead. The one thing that that has impressed me the most about him, before I ask you about the district judges, the one thing that I'm really impressed, Barry, is his level of activity. I mean, I guess energy is the word I'm looking for. His his level of energy. I mean, the man is like he's on 24/7. He doesn't let a minute go by without being on TV. He's constantly talking to the press. He does a press conference practically every day. So I mean that level of energy, I have to confess, I have not seen in any president in quite some time. Now I don't know if that's on purpose to show a contrast with the Biden administration, which had the exact opposite situation, no energy on the part of the president. But it is remarkable, the energy. I mean, I sometimes ask myself, when is this guy going to take a day off, Barry?
Well, the fact is, we have seen it before, and we saw it before from 2016, or excuse me, 2017 to 2021. This is the most masterful public relations president ever, at least in the modern times, in the modern communications technology. And what he did was, from the very beginning, was he dominated the news, basically by a news media that was hostile to him.
Right.
But he was able to get everybody's attention. And then in the period from 2021 to 2024, when he was supposedly, and in fact, out of power, he still dominated the news. And of course, the Democrats made the terrible, ultimately fatal mistake of enabling him to dominate the news and be renominated in a situation that was not very likely in 2021. But because he had very serious opponents for the nomination in 2023, 24, but they never had a chance because the Democrats' so-called lawfare attempts to remove him from the political scene only gave him the opportunity to dominate the news every day.
Right.
And so this is nothing new. What it is, we've seen the most skillful operative in that regard, in regards to dominating the news. And of course, that has a lot to do with one's political success in an era where you have 300 and some million people and you can't shake everybody's hand. Right. So you've got to be in the news and being talked about, even though a lot of it was negative. The fact that the Democrats, in effect, ganged up on him and made it appear very unfair and made him a much more sympathetic figure than he normally would have been, and enabled him to win the nomination. Right. And then, as I pointed out, whether it would be Biden or anybody else, the election was basically over. The country had made up its mind, and as you recall, and I was on this program that I did it in part. I pointed out in September and October that it wasn't close, despite what the so-called establishment media was telling us it was close, and the pollsters, I said it wasn't.
Right.
And of course, we found out afterwards.
That's it. It wasn't. It wasn't. Yeah, it was never really close at all. Let me. You talked about lawfare, and I agree with you. I thought that was a very ineffective campaign on the part of the Democrats. They seem to be doing it again now. This time through district judges. You have all these district judges throwing things at him, and he's winning some. There are still many pending. There's one right now pending. I guess the big one that seems to be pending is the one about these deportation flights. But personally, I don't, looking at it as a citizen, I don't understand where these district judges get the authority to do this. It's almost like, I just saw a note before we started the show that there was like 600 of these district judges. And I guess the president has to get the unanimous consent of all of them in order to do anything. I just think that's really tyranny, judicial tyranny. And I hope the Supreme Court, Barry, comes down very hard on these judges and say, hey, you don't do that. That was decided in the election. Those kinds of topics were decided in the election, Barry.
Well, there's a few instances where the district judges are the initial test of something. We do have a system of laws and the right to appeal. The fact is, however, that already the appeals courts are deciding against, in many cases, the district courts. I pointed out that some of the individual orders, such as the birthright citizenship order, may in fact hold up, may in fact be held up until the Congress acts. But remember, the district courts are not the last say. Every district court decision is appealable to a higher court and ultimately to the Supreme Court.
Right.
As you point out, in most cases, the Supreme Court is going to have the final say, and it's hard to imagine that they won't, in most cases, come down on the president's side.
Yes, that's what I feel too. I think they will, but it's frustrating, I think, for people who look at these district judges and say, "Wait a minute, what are you doing? Why are you getting involved?" But you're right. On one hand, you're right. That is the process that we have, but it does seem like these national injunctions have just blown up under President Trump, and that's, I think, the part that upsets a lot of us. It's not the district judges. We're not trying to delete the district judges. We just don't understand how one district judge or so many district judges can issue these national injunctions where all of a sudden, everything comes to a stop. I think that's the frustrating part, Barry.
Well, I think it's the way that the Democrats basically have used. It's their only real device they have to try and block the president's actions, most of which are very popular. And I think, being realistic, we should never have expected, it to go, completely quickly and smoothly without opposition. We do have an opposition party, whether it be the Republicans or the Democrats, always in place, and that's the system we have.
Right.
No,
I understand that. I understand that part, but I don't remember, Republican district judges issuing injunctions that many times against.
Well, that was not a strategy of the Republicans.
No.
Of course, things always pop up, and new things pop up, and especially considering the weakness of the Democratic response to the president's actions, we shouldn't be surprised that they would find a device through their Democratic appointed district judges. But so what's the absolute rush? I think in the end, the president's going to prevail. In most cases, in some cases he won't. Some cases, perhaps he should not.
Right. Well, yeah, you're right. He's probably not going to win all of them, but I think he'll win the big ones. The ones that he wants, I think he'll win. The one about birthright, I agree with you. He cannot do that by executive order. My guess is that will go to the Supreme Court. This is my guess on the birthright. It'll be challenged, as it has already been. The executive order was challenged. He'll take it to the Supreme Court, and in my opinion, the Supreme Court will say, look, there's nothing in the Constitution that says you automatically get citizenship just because you're here, you're born here. But if the Congress wants to do that, we're going to send it to the Congress and let the Congress decide. That's what I think is going to happen. That's my feeling, because there is really the 14th Amendment. I think the court can look at that amendment and decide that it had nothing to do with a baby born of a person who's here without papers. I mean, that 14th Amendment, better than me, was a very specific amendment for a very specific situation. Basically, the African Americans who were in the South who didn't have citizenship, Barry.
Well, as I said, I agree with you. I think it may be, but I think, we don't have to go on length about this, but I think what we're going to see is that probably most of his executive orders will be fulfilled ultimately, some immediately, some a little more slowly, some even more slow, and a couple will not go through.
Right. No, I agree.
However, is that he has tried incredibly, and I think importantly, disrupting the traditional government, which has become bloated and corrupted and excessive, and he's a lot of people are federal employees are losing their jobs, as they should, but not everybody. And some of his mistakes was he fired some people he shouldn't have fired, or tried to fire, like people involved with nuclear safety. And but the fact is, as we're discovering with our foreign aid and U.S. aid and so many other federal programs, they have become excessive. People were unaware of where the money was going. Some of it was absolute fraud. Some of it was simply payoffs to political friends. He is Elon Musk's efforts. He is making a real effort. Already accomplished a lot in each department. He's already, I don't know how it will hold up, but he has basically eliminated the Department of Education, which he promised to do. And I think, for example, the electoral color of Virginia, which borders on Washington, D.C., which has been recent years quite blue, because so many federal employees were hired by the Democrats, will now begin to shift as those employees go away, having lost their jobs, seeking new employment, and new, more conservative folks taking up their jobs. And so the area around Washington, which is delivering heavily large margins to the Democrats, will now be much more so-called red and be Republican. And Virginia may go from being a blue or purplish state back to being a red state.
Right. As it was as recently as George W. Bush,
Yes.
as recently as that. Well, you mentioned about the Democrats. They're in total disarray. You've already mentioned a little bit about that. Who is their, I mean, if you took a guess right now, who's their leader? Who is the leader of the Democrat Party? Or is it normal for a party in their situation not to have a leader and just sit around without a leader for a while? So is this normal for what they're going through, that they don't seem to have anybody at the top? They have a bunch of different people, saying a lot of different things at times. It sounds like there's a war between the central left, the more traditional Democrats that we kind of grew up watching, and the more left Democrats. So, I mean, just your thoughts about the Democrat Party, Barry.
Well, I think it's not. I think they took a big defeat, and the fact is that their incumbent president only served one term and was clearly disabled, certainly at the end of his term, and who could not, of course, continue to be a leader. The previous president who did leave on a more positive note, President Obama, was seemingly rejected by voters. Certainly his appeal at the end on behalf of Mrs. Harris. Mrs. Harris was a terribly weak candidate. Our own governor, Tim Walz, was a very poor vice presidential candidate and continues to be I don't know what his political future is, but it doesn't look very bright, despite his attempts to get attention. So the Democrats are really forced to, and of course, the older people like Bernie Sanders and the senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren, they're very old and they still have some impact. And of course, some of the younger, like AOC and Ilhan Omar, they're attempting to be leaders, but they aren't going anywhere.
Right. Yeah. They don't have I don't think any of them, the ones you mentioned, have the ability to go, in all of those areas of the country where Trump succeeded, all of those counties between Washington, D.C. and San Francisco. And I don't see them winning too many counties in that area. Here in Texas, Barry, we had a situation, such a phenomenal situation. I think I told you about this before, but I'll mention it again. There's a county on the border called Starr County, and it's between the cities of Laredo and San Antonio are in this county. One of the most Mexican-American counties in the country. And it voted for Trump by 57%. And immigration and the border issues were the primary concern. So that, they weren't talking the right message. And I think that had a lot to do with Hispanics. Let me, before we go, Barry, give me your thoughts on this election next door in Wisconsin. Normally, we don't talk that much about Supreme Court elections in a state, but this one is getting a lot of attention, Barry. There's a couple of candidates. What I'm reading is that the Democrat seems to be the head of the game right now, but both sides are really putting out the effort. How do you see it next door?
Well, I don't. Even though it's next door, I don't claim to really know Wisconsin politics that well. I know the politics on the congressional politics near the border a little better. The fact is that it's a very important election because it will have a lot to say. I mean, Wisconsin is a purple state. It went to Trump last time, went to Biden the time before, in both cases by small margin. And the Supreme Court will have a lot to say about the voting environment, and it's pretty much of a tie. And the winner, the ideology of the winner, will probably prevail in the next not only midterm election but presidential election.
Right.
So
Well,
there's a lot at stake.
Yeah.
I think that normally you would think the Republican would win, but there's a lot of issues here that help Democrats. I haven't heard. I've heard that basically it's virtually a tie.
Right.
Some polls so have the Republican slightly ahead, some have the Democrat.
Right.
It's done.
That's what I'm hearing too. I mean, that's exactly what I've heard. A couple of friends up in Wisconsin are basically telling me the same thing, that it's too close to call. Some of these services that predict who's going to win, like these betting services, are giving the Democrat the edge. But it's a close election, and as I understand, it determines who the majority of the Supreme Court is, and it could potentially redraw the congressional districts and end up giving the Democrats a couple of more seats in the House. That's what I understand the big issue to be, but we'll have to wait for the voters. It's going to be on the 1st, I believe, so that's Tuesday or Wednesday of the next week. Well, Barry, as always, I want to thank you so much for your time. It's always a great pleasure to chat with you, and we will call on you again. And you do a great job with the Prairie Editor. I love it. As you know, I'm a subscriber, and I love it. And keep up the great work, Barry. We love reading your articles.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening.
All right, and go Yankees.
Yeah.
All right. Our good friend Barry Casselman, joining us by phone from the Twin Cities. He is the editor of the Prairie Editor, a website where he writes political columns. He also writes in other places as well. But thank you for your time. Thank you very much for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.